The massive space station hung in the void like a giant metal city. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports. Inside the Nexus War College, beings from 12 different worlds prepared for the most important military exercise in known space. Captain Maya Rodriguez walked through the gleaming corridors. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. Behind her followed 4 other humans. They wore simple blue uniforms that looked plain next to the elaborate armor and robes of other species. Lieutenant Lisa Park checked her tablet as they moved. She was the communications expert of their small group. Her black hair caught the artificial light as she studied the station layout. Next to her walked Kate Morrison, a pilot whose quick reflexes had impressed even their toughest instructors. Back on Earth, Amy Foster carried a heavy bag of tools and spare parts. As their engineer, she always came prepared for anything. Beth Williams brought up the rear. The medic had trained in combat as well as healing. All 5 women had graduated from Earth Academy just 3 months ago. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with hundreds of beings. Tall elven warriors stood in perfect formation. Their leader was War Commander Zethara, whose silver hair fell to her shoulders. She had trained for over 1,000 years. Her pale skin showed no signs of age, and her green eyes missed nothing. Near the elves stood reptilian saurians. Their scales gleamed under the lights. General Vexanali commanded this group. She had won battles across 8 star systems over her 800-year career. Her yellow eyes focused on the humans with obvious curiosity. Crystalline beings from the hegemony reflected light like living diamonds. Admiral Kretha led them with mathematical precision. Every movement followed calculated patterns. Her people saw warfare as a science to be perfected through study and practice. Other species filled the chamber. Some had wings, others had multiple arms. All had centuries of military tradition behind them. When the humans entered, conversations stopped. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to study these newcomers. A Saurian cadet laughed loudly. His voice carried across the chamber. Other beings began to whisper among themselves. Some pointed at the human weapons, which looked crude compared to their advanced technology. War Commander Zethara observed the humans carefully. She had read their files during the journey to the station. These 5 had completed only basic training. The oldest was 28 years old. In elven terms, they were barely children. Yet Earth had convinced the Galactic Alliance to let them participate in the Crucible Games. Admiral Patricia Hayes stepped forward to address the assembly. The human commander had gray hair and worn features. She had fought in Earth wars before. Humans knew other species existed. Her voice carried authority as she spoke to the mixed crowd. The annual Crucible Games would test every aspect of military skill. Strategy, combat, leadership, and adaptation would all be measured. Winners would bring honor to their species and advancement to their careers. Losers would face shame and possible demotion. Dr. Helen Carter sat in the observation area. The xenopsychologist had studied alien military doctrine for years. She wanted to understand how different species approached warfare. This would be her first chance to see humans compete against galactic standards. Ambassador Claire Davis represented Earth in the official ceremonies. She knew the political importance of this event. How well the humans performed would affect Earth relationships with every major power in the galaxy. Success could mean new trade agreements and technology sharing. Failure might isolate humanity for generations. The first challenge was announced. Teams would assault a heavily defended orbital platform. The simulation used real physics and accurate weapon models. Most veteran squads needed 3 full days to complete it successfully. Planning typically took 12 hours alone. Alien teams immediately began forming strategy circles. The elves spread detailed holographic maps across tables. They analyzed every angle of approach and calculated supply requirements. Saurian generals argued over the best formation patterns. Their voices grew loud as they debated tactics used in famous historical battles. The crystalline beings created mathematical models. They factored in gravity wells, orbital mechanics, and probability matrices. Every variable received careful consideration before they would commit to any plan. Maya gathered her team in a corner of the chamber. They spoke quietly while other groups continued their elaborate preparations. Lisa pulled up the basic mission parameters on her tablet. Kate studied the target platform layout. Amy checked their equipment loadout. Beth reviewed medical supplies and evacuation procedures. War Commander Cythera watched the human discussion with growing confusion. Where were their strategic maps? Why had they not requested additional intelligence reports? Their preparations seemed almost casual compared to the intense planning happening around them. After only 20 minutes, Maya stood up. She told her team to grab their gear and head to the simulation pods. The other humans nodded and collected their equipment. They walked toward the launching bay, while alien teams continued planning. General Vexanali stopped mid-sentence in her tactical discussion. Her yellow eyes followed the departing humans. Several other commanders noticed the movement. Whispers spread through the chamber about human arrogance or ignorance. Talisa, a young elven officer, approached War Commander Cythera. She asked if the humans understood the complexity of the challenge. Cythera studied the empty corner where the human team had been sitting. No papers remained. No holographic projections continued running. They had left no trace of planning behind. Dr. Carter made notes on her tablet. She had observed similar behavior in human military exercises. Earth forces often preferred action to extended planning, but this was different. These aliens had refined their methods over thousands of years. Surely experience would triumph over impulsiveness. The simulation pods were massive spheres that could replicate any combat environment. Teams entered them to face virtual enemies with real consequences for failure. Pain simulators and psychological pressure made the experience feel completely authentic. Maya led her team into Pod 7. The metal door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. Inside, 5 acceleration chairs waited. Each had neural interface cables and life support connections. The women strapped themselves in without hesitation. In the control room, observers gathered to watch multiple screens. Each showed different team preparations. Most pods remained dark as groups continued planning. Only Pod 7 showed activity as the human team initialized their systems. Cythera joined the observers. She wanted to understand human tactics before the real competition began. If Earth had somehow produced effective warriors in such a short time, other species needed to learn their methods. The orbital platform materialized around the human team. Massive guns tracked their approach vector. Shield generators created overlapping defensive fields. Automated fighters launched from hidden bays. The simulation was designed to test every aspect of military skill. Other alien teams would spend hours identifying optimal approach routes. They would calculate precise timing for synchronized attacks. Supply lines would be established for extended operations. Every detail would be planned before the first shot was fired. Maya looked at the tactical display and smiled. She had seen similar problems during Earth military exercises. The solution was not to overthink the situation. She opened communications to her team and gave simple orders. Kate fired the engines and dove straight toward the platform. Her flying style ignored standard approach patterns. Amy began modifying their weapons while they flew. Lisa started scanning enemy communications for weaknesses. Beth prepared medical supplies and backup plans. In the observation room, alien commanders watched in shock. The humans were attacking immediately, without reconnaissance or preparation. Their approach violated every principle of sound military doctrine. Surely they would fail within minutes. War Commander Cythera leaned forward in her chair. Something about the human actions seemed familiar. She had read about ancient elven warriors who fought with pure instinct. But that was before proper military science developed. Modern warfare required planning and coordination. The first phase of the simulation began. The human team faced obstacles that had stopped veteran squads for hours. But instead of following predictable patterns, they adapted and improvised. Their unconventional approach created chaos in the defensive systems. Observers started to realize that the humans might actually succeed. The thought seemed impossible, but the evidence was clear on every screen. Earth's newest cadets were outperforming warriors with centuries of experience. The challenge had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. 18 hours later, alarms sounded throughout the observation deck. The massive display screens showed an impossible result. Pod 7 had completed the orbital assault simulation. The human team had finished in record time while other groups were still in their planning phases. War Commander Zathera stared at the data feeds in disbelief. Every sensor confirmed the same information. The humans had successfully captured the orbital platform, neutralized all defenses, and secured the primary objectives. Their time of 18 hours shattered the previous record of 42 hours set by veteran Saurian commandos. General Vexanali slammed her clawed hand on the control panel. Her reptilian features twisted with confusion and anger. She demanded an immediate review of all simulation data. Surely the humans had found some kind of technical error to exploit. No first-year cadets could outperform her elite warriors. Admiral Kretha processed the information with mathematical precision. Her crystalline form reflected the harsh lights of the control room as she analyzed every aspect of the human performance. The data made no logical sense, according to established military theory. Yet the numbers could not be disputed. Dr. Carter furiously typed notes on her tablet. She had documented the entire human approach from beginning to end. Their tactics violated every principle taught in galactic military academies. They had ignored standard reconnaissance procedures, abandoned formation protocols, and improvised solutions to complex problems. Maya led her team out of the simulation pod. All 5 women looked tired, but satisfied. They had faced challenges that would test seasoned veterans, yet they had succeeded through teamwork and adaptation. Kate stretched her arms after hours of intense piloting. Amy wiped grease from her hands, where she had modified equipment during combat. Lisa reviewed the communication intercepts they had gathered during the mission. Her hacking skills had penetrated enemy networks in ways the simulation designers never anticipated. Beth checked her medical supplies, though none of the team had suffered serious injuries during their unconventional assault. Alien teams emerged from their planning sessions to find the humans already finished. Elven commanders studied holographic displays that showed human tactics frame by frame. The attack patterns made no sense, according to traditional military doctrine, yet they had proven devastatingly effective against prepared defenses. Commander Talisa approached War Commander Zathera with questions. How had humans learned to fight with such effectiveness in only months of training? Their movements showed no sign of formal military education. Instead, they seemed to rely on pure instinct and mutual trust. Zathera found herself questioning fundamental assumptions about warfare. For over 1,000 years, she had studied every aspect of military science. Proper planning led to victory. Coordinated attacks overwhelmed defenses. Established tactics had proven successful across countless battles throughout galactic history. Yet, these human newcomers had achieved victory through methods that should have led to disaster. They had split their forces without proper communication protocols. Kate had flown their assault craft through approach vectors that violated basic safety requirements. Amy had combined equipment in ways that engineering manuals specifically warned against. Dr. Carter interviewed the human team immediately after their emergence from the simulation. Maya explained their approach in simple terms. They had identified the primary objective and moved directly toward it. When obstacles appeared, they had adapted their methods to overcome them. Planning was useful, but action was more important. The xenopsychologists struggled to understand this mindset. Every other species in the galaxy had developed sophisticated military traditions over thousands of years. Complex strategies and detailed preparations had proven their worth in countless conflicts. How could humans succeed by ignoring proven methods? Ambassador Claire Davis felt relief, mixed with concern. The human success would certainly impress galactic leaders and improve Earth's standing in the Alliance. However, it would also create new expectations and possibly new enemies. Some species might view human capabilities as a threat to their own military supremacy. In emergency session chambers, alien military leaders gathered to discuss the unexpected results. Saurian generals argued that the simulation must have been flawed. Crystalline admirals demanded mathematical analysis of every human decision. Elven war commanders debated whether ancient texts contained similar tactical approaches. General Vexenali accused the humans of cheating through unknown technology. Her 800 years of experience could not accept that untrained newcomers had outperformed her carefully selected elite forces. She demanded immediate investigation of all human equipment and procedures. Admiral Kretha presented detailed probability calculations. According to her analysis, the human success rate should have been less than 1%. Their tactics had multiple points of potential failure that should have led to mission collapse. Yet somehow they had succeeded, where mathematical models predicted disaster. War Commander Zathera found herself defending the human achievement. She had observed their entire performance through direct sensor feeds. No evidence suggested technological cheating or simulation errors. The humans had simply approached the problem differently than any other species in galactic history. The second challenge was announced while debates continued in the background. Ground combat simulation would test close quarters, fighting, urban warfare, and civilian protection scenarios. Teams would face multiple objectives in a complex environment, designed to challenge every aspect of military training. Alien teams immediately began new planning sessions. The elves spread detailed maps of the urban battlefield across multiple tables. They identified key defensive positions, supply routes, and potential ambush sites. Their planning process would likely take 8 hours before they entered the simulation.saurian. Forces debated formation tactics for urban environments. Their natural strength and armor made them effective in direct combat. But buildings and civilians complicated their standard approaches. They needed time to adapt their traditional methods to the new environment. The crystalline beings created three-dimensional models of the entire battlefield. They calculated sight lines, cover effectiveness, and optimal movement patterns. Every variable received mathematical analysis before they would commit forces to any particular strategy. Maya gathered her team near the simulation pods once again. They spent 15 minutes reviewing the basic mission parameters and civilian protection requirements. Kate studied building layouts to plan aerial support routes. Amy checked their equipment for urban combat modifications. Lisa analyzed the communication networks available in the simulated city. She identified multiple ways to gather intelligence and coordinate with friendly forces. Beth reviewed medical protocols for treating civilians and team members in combat situations. After their brief discussion, the human team headed directly to Pod 7. Other observers expected them to fail this time. Orbital assault was one thing, but ground combat required different skills. Urban warfare had rules and complexities that experience alone could teach. Zathera followed the humans to the observation deck. She wanted to understand their methods before her own team entered the simulation. If humans possessed some advantage, she needed to identify and counter it. Her military reputation depended on successful performance in these exercises. The urban battlefield materialized around the human team. Tall buildings created narrow corridors filled with potential threats. Civilians moved through the streets, requiring protection while complicating military operations. Enemy forces held strategic positions throughout the area. Traditional tactics called for systematic building clearing and coordinated advances. Teams would establish secure zones and gradually expand their control. Civilians would be evacuated to safe areas before major combat operations began. The process typically required 60 hours for completion. Maya looked at the tactical situation and made another unconventional decision. Instead of keeping her team together, she ordered them to split up immediately. Each woman would pursue different objectives while maintaining communication through improvised signals and coded messages. Kate launched their air support vehicle and immediately began flying between buildings. Her flight path ignored standard safety protocols as she used the urban environment in ways that horrified military observers. She flew through windows, under bridges, and around obstacles that should have been impossible to navigate. Amy moved through the streets with her engineering equipment. She began modifying civilian infrastructure to create new tactical advantages. Streetlights became communication relays. Maintenance tunnels became secure movement routes. Her innovations used resources that military planners had never considered. Lisa established communication networks using civilian equipment. She hacked local media broadcasts to spread information and coordinate with friendly forces. Her methods violated communication protocols, but proved incredibly effective for intelligence gathering and coordination. Beth moved through the combat zone, treating wounded civilians while simultaneously gathering tactical intelligence. Her medical training gave her access to areas that would be dangerous for other team members. She also identified enemy positions through patient interviews and observation. In the observation room, alien commanders watched in growing amazement. The human approach violated every principle of sound military doctrine. Yet their effectiveness continued to exceed all expectations. They were achieving objectives faster than veterans with centuries of experience. War Commander Zethara realized that her fundamental understanding of warfare might be incomplete. The humans operated on principles that her training had never addressed. They trusted each other completely and adapted to situations without waiting for orders or approval. The urban combat simulation continued, with results that shocked every observer. Humans were not just succeeding, they were redefining what success meant in military terms. Their methods suggested that everything the galaxy knew about warfare might need to be reconsidered. The ground combat simulation ended with another impossible result. The human team had completed all objectives in 22 hours, while protecting every civilian in the operational area. Their success rate exceeded theoretical maximum performance levels, according to established military calculations. Zethara stood alone in her quarters late that night. The day results challenged everything she had learned during her 1,000 years of military service. Her own team had completed similar simulations in 48 hours, with acceptable civilian casualties. The humans had done better while violating every tactical principle in existence. She accessed the complete recording of human combat operations. Kate had used her aircraft in ways that defied physics and safety regulations. The young pilot had flown through buildings, under debris, and around obstacles that should have destroyed her vehicle. Yet she had provided perfect air support throughout. The engagement, Amy's work as an engineer, had been equally unprecedented. She had turned civilian infrastructure into military assets, through methods never taught in any academy. Street lighting became secure communication networks. Subway tunnels became rapid deployment routes. Even garbage disposal systems had been weaponized for tactical advantage. Lisa communication intercepts had penetrated enemy networks faster than quantum computers could crack encryption codes. Her hacking methods used civilian equipment in combinations that military specialists had never considered. She had turned the entire urban environment into an intelligence-gathering network. Beth had moved through combat zones treating civilians, while simultaneously conducting reconnaissance operations. Her medical training provided cover for activities that would have been impossible for traditional soldiers. She had gathered more tactical intelligence than specialized. Reconnaissance units typically collected. Zethra found herself secretly downloading human tactical recordings to her personal files. If her superiors discovered this action, she would face court-martial for military espionage. But she needed to understand how these newcomers had achieved such remarkable results with minimal training. In her private analysis, she began experimenting with human concepts. What would happen if elven forces abandoned rigid formation protocols? Could her warriors adapt to changing situations without waiting for detailed orders? The questions felt like heresy against thousands of years of military tradition. Admiral Krytha spent the night running mathematical models on human performance data. Her crystalline processors worked at maximum capacity, trying to understand the statistical impossibility of their success. Every calculation suggested that their tactics should have failed catastrophically. She identified 17 separate points during the ground combat where human decisions violated optimal strategic choices. Yet each violation had led to unexpected advantages that traditional planning could never have predicted. The mathematical models simply could not account for this level of adaptability. Dr. Carter worked through the night, documenting her observations. The xenopsychologist had discovered something that might revolutionize understanding of military psychology across the galaxy. Human success seemed based on principles that contradicted established theories about combat effectiveness and unit coordination. Her preliminary analysis suggested that human military effectiveness came from flexibility rather than preparation. Where other species relied on detailed planning and established procedures, humans trusted their ability to adapt to unexpected situations. This approach created advantages that traditional methods could not match. The next morning brought news that sent shockwaves through the station. 3 alien teams had requested permission to modify their training approaches based on human observations. Young officers from different species wanted to experiment with adaptive tactics. Instead of following traditional protocols, Commander Talisa approached War Commander Zethra with a forbidden request. She wanted to observe human team interactions more closely before the final challenge. Traditional elven doctrine prohibited learning from inferior species, but the results spoke for themselves. Perhaps adaptation was more important than adherence to ancient ways. Zethra agreed to the request, despite knowing the political risks. Her decision could end her military career if discovered by conservative elven leadership. But her loyalty to her warriors was stronger than her fear of political consequences. If human methods could save elven lives, she would risk everything to learn them. General Vexenali faced rebellion within her own ranks. Younger Saurian officers questioned whether traditional formation tactics were still relevant in modern warfare. They had watched human forces achieve impossible victories through methods that Saurian doctrines specifically forbade. Change was becoming inevitable. She called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. The discussion became heated as conservative officers defended established traditions, while younger commanders demanded permission to experiment with new approaches. The debate reflected tensions developing throughout the galactic military establishment. Admiral Patricia Hayes monitored political developments with growing concern. The human success was creating unexpected consequences throughout the Alliance. Some species were embracing change, while others were becoming hostile to human influence. Earth needed to navigate these reactions carefully to avoid making powerful enemies. Ambassador Claire Davis received urgent communications from multiple alien governments. Some requested human military advisors, while others demanded restrictions on human participation in future exercises. The political landscape was shifting faster than diplomats could manage the changes. The final challenge was announced amid this growing tension. All teams would participate in a massive space battle simulation involving coordinated fleet operations. Traditional doctrine required complex command structures and predetermined battle formations. Success depended on precise timing and flawless execution of established tactics. Maya studied the mission parameters with her team. The space battle involved protecting a convoy of civilian ships while defeating a superior enemy force. Multiple objectives required simultaneous attention across a vast battlefield. Coordination between different unit types would be essential for victory. For the first time, human forces would need to work within larger command structures rather than operating independently. Their previous successes had come from small unit tactics and improvised solutions. Fleet operations required different skills that their brief training had barely addressed. Kate reviewed the available spacecraft and weapon systems. The fighters were more advanced than anything she had trained on during Earth Academy courses. Their capabilities were impressive, but she would need to learn their systems while participating in actual combat operations. Amy examined the technical specifications of the larger warships. The engineering systems used technologies that Earth had only recently acquired through Alliance membership. She would need to understand alien equipment while making real-time modifications under combat conditions. Lisa analyzed the communication protocols used in large-scale fleet operations. The networks were more complex than anything she had previously encountered. Multiple species used different systems that barely interfaced with each other. Coordination would be extremely challenging. Beth prepared medical supplies for treating multiple species with different physiological requirements. The simulation would include casualties from various alien races whose medical needs she had only studied in theoretical courses. Her training would be tested in ways she had never experienced. War Commander Sethera received assignment as overall tactical coordinator for the exercise. Her experience with large-scale operations made her the obvious choice despite recent questions about her loyalty to traditional methods. She would need to integrate human forces into established Alliance battle doctrine. The assignment put her in direct conflict with her growing belief in human tactical superiority. She would be required to use humans according to standard protocols, while knowing that their unconventional methods might be more effective. Her military oath demanded obedience to established command structures. As teams prepared for the final simulation, tension filled the station corridors. Conservative military leaders wanted to prove that traditional methods remained superior. Progressive officers hoped that human innovations would validate their calls for reform. The outcome would determine the future direction of galactic military. DOCTRINE. Dr. Carter documented the psychological pressure building throughout the station. The final challenge would test more than tactical skills. It would determine whether the galactic military establishment could adapt to new realities, or would resist change regardless of evidence. The space battle simulation represented a crossroads for military thinking across the galaxy. Traditional approaches would face their ultimate test against human adaptability and innovation. The results would either validate thousands of years of military evolution, or prove that everything needed to change. Maya gathered her team for their final preparation session. They faced their greatest challenge yet, while carrying the hopes and fears of an entire galaxy. Success would revolutionize military thinking. Failure would confirm that human methods were limited to small-scale operations. The battle would begin soon, and nothing would ever be the same for anyone involved. The massive fleet simulation began with 12 different species coordinating their forces, according to traditional battle doctrine. War Commander Zathera commanded the operation from the primary battle bridge while human forces were assigned to a minor support role protecting supply ships. Admiral Kretha positioned her crystalline vessels in perfect geometric formations, calculated for maximum firepower efficiency. General Vexanali deployed Saurian heavy cruisers in traditional line-of-battle arrangements that had proven successful for centuries. Other species followed equally established tactical doctrines. The enemy artificial intelligence system activated with overwhelming force. Enemy fleets appeared in perfect formation with superior numbers and advanced weaponry. The simulation was designed to test Alliance coordination under extreme pressure. Victory would require flawless execution of complex battle plans. Maya watched, from her support position, as the battle began. Her small squadron of human fighters was assigned to defend civilian transports far from the main engagement. The assignment felt like deliberate relegation to prevent human interference with established command structures. The initial engagement proceeded exactly according to Alliance doctrine. Coordinated volleys targeted priority enemy vessels, while defensive formations maintained protective screens around capital ships. Every movement followed patterns refined through thousands of years of military evolution. The battle plan was perfect in its mathematical precision. Then everything began to fall apart. The enemy AI adapted faster than Alliance command structures could respond. Battle formations that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia suddenly became predictable targets. Coordinated attacks found weaknesses in defensive arrangements that had always been considered impregnable. Alliance casualties mounted rapidly as traditional tactics failed against an opponent that learned and adapted in real time. War Commander Zathera found herself trapped in command protocols that moved too slowly to respond to changing battlefield conditions. Her requests for tactical modifications required approval from multiple command levels. Admiral Kretha, mathematical models could not calculate fast enough to keep pace with enemy adaptations. Her crystalline vessels maintained perfect formations even as they were systematically destroyed by opponents who refused to follow predictable patterns. Geometric perfection became a fatal weakness against adaptive opponents. General Vexen watched her heavy cruisers being outmaneuvered by enemies who ignored traditional rules of engagement. Her centuries of experience had taught her that certain tactics always worked against specific threats. But these enemies changed their approaches faster than her forces could respond. In the support sector, Maya made a decision that violated every principle of military chain of command. Without authorization from higher authority, she ordered her squadron to abandon their assigned positions and join the main battle. Her action broke formation discipline and ignored direct orders. From Fleet Command. Kate immediately responded by diving her fighter squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. Her flight patterns ignored safety protocols and formation requirements. She flew through crossfire zones that should have been instantly fatal while targeting enemy vessels with weapons combinations that violated standard engagement doctrines. Amy began modifying human weapons systems while under fire. Her engineering changes used equipment in ways that manufacturers had never intended. Shield generators became offensive weapons. Communication arrays became targeting systems. Every piece of technology was adapted for purposes beyond its original design. Lisa penetrated enemy communication networks using methods that bypassed advanced security systems. She fed false information to enemy commanders while intercepting their tactical plans. Her cyber warfare techniques used human creativity against opponents who relied on mathematical encryption. Beth coordinated rescue operations for damaged Alliance vessels, while simultaneously gathering tactical intelligence from wounded personnel. Her medical training provided cover for activities that would have been impossible for traditional combat soldiers. She saved lives while improving overall tactical awareness. War-Commander Zathera watched human forces achieve impossible results through methods that horrified traditional commanders. Maya's squadron was single-handedly turning the tide of battle by ignoring every established principle of fleet combat. Their success came through chaos rather than coordination. The turning point came when Zathera made her own unauthorized decision. Despite centuries of conditioning that emphasized obedience to command authority, she chose to support human tactical innovations. Her announcement over the fleet communication network shocked every participant in the exercise. She ordered all Alliance forces to adopt human adaptive tactics immediately. Formation requirements were suspended. Weapon usage restrictions were lifted. Individual commanders were authorized to make independent tactical decisions without waiting for higher approval. The change violated fundamental principles of military Organization. Commander Talisa immediately responded by abandoning her assigned position to support human operations. Her elven fighters began using unconventional attack patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. Other young officers from different species quickly followed her example. Despite protests from conservative commanders, the battle transformed from traditional fleet engagement into something entirely new. Alliance forces began adapting and improvising in real time rather than following predetermined plans. Coordination came through shared objectives rather than rigid command structures. Innovation replaced tradition as the primary tactical principle. Amy engineering modifications spread throughout the fleet as other species copied her. Equipment adaptations. Shield harmonics became weapons systems. Sensor arrays became communication networks. Every piece of technology was reimagined for purposes beyond original specifications. Lisa cyber warfare. Techniques were adopted by communication specialists from multiple species. Traditional encryption methods gave way to creative approaches that confused enemy artificial intelligence systems. Information warfare became as important as physical combat in determining battle outcomes. Kate, flight tactics influenced pilots from every species in the Alliance fleet. Formation flying was abandoned in favor of individualized approaches that maximized each pilot's unique capabilities. The result was combat effectiveness that exceeded all previous performance standards. Beth. Medical protocols became the foundation for new rescue and intelligence gathering operations. Her integration of healing and reconnaissance showed other species how to combine traditionally separate military functions. Cross-training became more valuable than specialized expertise. War Commander. Zathera found herself coordinating a battle that bore no resemblance to anything in her 1,000 years of military experience, yet the results were undeniable. Alliance forces were achieving victory against overwhelming odds through methods that should have led to disaster. The enemy artificial intelligence system began making critical errors as it tried to counter adaptive tactics it had never encountered. Its programming was based on traditional military doctrine from all known species. Human innovations fell outside its analytical parameters, creating vulnerabilities that Alliance forces could exploit. General Vexanali abandoned her conservative command style and began encouraging her younger officers to experiment with new approaches. Her heavy cruisers started using unconventional formations that confused enemy targeting systems. Centuries of tradition gave way to immediate tactical necessity. Admiral Kretha. Mathematical models incorporated human chaos theory for the first time in crystalline military history. Her calculations began accounting for variables that traditional analysis had never considered. Geometric perfection was supplemented by adaptive flexibility. The Nexus War College expanded to accommodate students from every Alliance species seeking to learn adaptive tactics. Traditional military academies on dozens of worlds updated their curricula to include human innovations. Military education evolved throughout the galaxy. War Commander Zathera wrote the definitive text on integrated alien-human military doctrine. Her book became required reading at military academies across known space. The work showed how different species could learn from each other without abandoning their unique strengths. Dr. Carter established the Institute for Comparative Military Psychology on Earth. Researchers from multiple species studied how different cultures approached warfare and leadership. The Institute became the premier center for understanding military effectiveness across species barriers. Ambassador Davis received the highest diplomatic honor in Alliance history for her role in managing the cultural transformation. Her negotiations had prevented political collapse while enabling necessary military evolution. Earth relationship with other species reached unprecedented levels of cooperation. The human cadets who had shocked the galaxy continued their careers as leaders in the new integrated military structure. Their success had proven that innovation, could overcome experience when applied with intelligence and determination. They became symbols of successful adaptation. 10 years after the original Crucible games, military doctrine throughout the galaxy bore little resemblance to traditional approaches. Flexibility had become as important as strength. Adaptation was valued as highly as preparation. Innovation was encouraged rather than discouraged. The changes extended beyond military applications. Business, diplomacy, and scientific research all began incorporating adaptive approaches inspired by human success. Cultural exchange accelerated as species learned to value different perspectives. Major Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez, stood in the same ceremony hall where her team had received their first recognition. She was presenting awards to a new generation of cadets who combined the best elements of multiple species traditions. The galaxy had learned to embrace change. The transformation was complete. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through superior force or technology. Instead, they had shown that the greatest strength lay in the ability to learn, adapt, and grow. The future belonged to those who could change rather than those who merely endured. In her final log entry as Academy Commandant, Admiral Patricia Hayes wrote that the human contribution to galactic civilization was not tactical innovation, but the demonstration that growth was always possible. The greatest victory was not defeating enemies, but helping allies become better than they had ever imagined. The story of 5 young women who changed military thinking across the galaxy became legend, but more importantly, it became proof that the future belonged to those brave enough to question established wisdom and bold enough to try new approaches when faced with unprecedented challenges. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best warriors were those who had learned to fight without being taught how to think.